Hey everyone, just coming to you with this public service announcement. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. So let me explain. First and foremost, it's free to do so. You don't got to come out of your pocket. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a whole bunch of others platforms. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. That's why I got on it. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. All right, peace. Peace, peace. We are back once again with Masterminds with Brother Shem. I'm your host, Brother Shem, and we're just going to get into it. Back with another one, and this one is called What is an Angel? And I'll just give some background shortly as to what it is about. But before I do so, as always, I want to thank everyone who is listening to the podcast, who has supported the podcast from day one, those who continue to support, those who are new to the podcast, and I hope that you like what you hear. Just basically no major updates other than I am back to working on putting out a new book. So I'm excited about that. I plan to have some, I believe I said this earlier, I will be having some guests coming shortly. I'm lining that up, but I'm really excited about the new book that I'm working on. Also looking forward to actually doing an Amazon launch on one of my books, What is the Higher Self? I'm going to revamp that book and put that and do an Amazon launch on that. So it will be in Amazon very soon. Also, the new book that I'm coming out with, I'm not going to give the title away just yet, but it's all along the same line of what I've been putting out. That also will be on Amazon as well. So looking forward to working on this new platform because I've been kind of private and kind of independent, more so self-contained as far as how I've been selling the books out. You'll still be able to go to my website, which is shemel.com, SHEM-EL.com to get my books. But, for the purpose of marketing to a larger audience, I know that there's a lot of people out there who want to get my work and they just, they're stuck in Amazon world. So I got to go out and reach out to the people. So be on the lookout for that. I'll keep you posted on the updates pertaining to that. So without further ado, the title of this episode is What is an Angel? And as some of you may know who study Moor science, that is a question that is in our Moorish questionnaire, where the question is asked, what is an angel? And the answer is an angel is a thought of Allah manifested in human flesh, which is distinct from another similar answer, from the question, what is a prophet? Where it says a prophet is a thought of Allah manifested in flesh. So we'll get into that. But as always, I like to start off by reading a passage from the Circle 7, and I'll be reading from chapter 10, the section that starts off about Allah's own record book. And the reason why I don't really specify the particular verse, I know in certain people's books, just how, it is, the verses are actually different Where I'm reading from verse 19, but it may not be 19 in your book if you have that particular one. So I'll just read it. It says, from Allah's own record book, we read, the triune Allah breathed forth and stood 7 spirits before his face. The Hebrews call these 7 spirits Elohim, and these are they who, in their boundless power, created everything that is or was. These spirits of the triune Allah moved on the face of boundless space, and 7 ethers were, and every ether had its form of life. These forms of life were but the thought of Allah, clothed in the substance of their ether planes. Men call these ether planes the planes of protoplasm, of earth, of plant, of beast, of man, of angel, and of cherubim. These planes, with all their teeming thoughts of Allah, are never seen by eyes of man in flesh. They are composed of substance far too fine for fleshly eyes to see, and still they constitute the soul of things. And with these eyes of soul, all creatures see these ether planes and all forms of life, because all forms of life on every plane are thoughts of Allah. All creatures think, and every creature is possessed of will, and in its measure has the power to choose. And in their native planes, all creatures are supplied with nourishment from the ethers of their planes. And so it was with every living thing until the will became a sluggish will. And then the ethers of the protoplasm, the earth, the plant, the beast, the man began to vibrate very slow. The ethers all became more dense, and all the creatures of these planes were clothed with coarser garbs of flesh, which men can see. And thus, this coarser manifest, which men call physical, appeared. And this is what is called the fall of man. But man fell not alone, for protoplasm and earth and plant and beast were all included in the fall. The angels and the cherubim fell not. Their wills were ever strong, and so they held the ethers of their planes in harmony with Allah. So I'll stop there. So one of the things that we notice in this passage is specifies about the various planes of existence and the manifest of those planes, and all forms of life on every plane being a thought of Allah. Now, the angel, as I mentioned, is unique in addition with the cherubim, which some have put in with the classifications of angels, but of a higher ranking, and we'll get into that. But it says the angels and the cherubim fell not, their wills were ever strong, and so they held the ethers of their planes in harmony with Allah, which is a unique perspective, because there are those in the Orthodox Islamic community. I've heard teachings in reference to the angels having no will of their own, so to speak. Their only will was the will of Allah, so to speak. So that's a unique perspective, and we kind of can get into that a little later. But what I will be drawing from, in addition to this, will be certain sections of the Bible Mysteries Revealed. As you know, lately I've been going into that, but also my own books, specifically who is Elohim and how many days are in the circle. So what I like to do first is get into these classifications of these angels first, dealing with that. And then we're going to explore the aspect of human thought, about the thought being manifest, because this is where it really gets deep. So, as you know, cherubim was already mentioned. So just drawing from Bible Mysteries Revealed, it says on page 99, the Hebrew Kabbalah shows the complete system of the celestial hierarchy and gives the names, position, and office of these rulers called Elohim, or gods. For example, Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, Seraphim, Cherubim, Shem, Malachim, Orphanim, Tarsisim, Aralim, Chasmalim, and a host of others. St. Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 40, there are celestial bodies and telestial bodies. And we kind of spoke on that in the last, or previous, I should say, episode, when we were talking about the celestial bodies and the telestial bodies, the first Adam and the last Adam, etc. So then it goes on to say this. Maspero says, quote, the affirmation of the fundamental unity of the divine being may be read in formal and energetic terms in the text dating from the days of the ancient empire. God, Spirit, is the only one. He who exists in essence. The only one living in substance. The sole generator in heaven and on earth, who is not himself engendered. At once, Father, Mother, and Son, he engenders, brings to birth, and is perpetually in these three persons, far from dividing divine nature, work together to his infinite perfection. His attributes are immensity, eternity, almighty will, and boundless goodness. He creates his own members, which are called gods. Each of these secondary gods, considered with the one God, may form a new type, from which other inferior types emanate in turn and by the same process, unquote. Which is from a book with a French title, which translates as Ancient History of the People of the Orient. Okay, so there's a couple of things I want to get in. First, I want to speak about the author, is described as M. Maspero. And I'll just touch on this real quick, and then I'll get into the text. M. Maspero was a term used for a man by the name of Gaston Maspero, right? Who was an actual French Egyptologist who wrote multiple books. Born in 1846, died in 1916. And, you know, in many of his books, it would just say G. Maspero, or sometimes M.G. Maspero, or sometimes M. Maspero. Now the M, you know, I don't know. It may be Monsieur, Master. I don't know what the M stood for. But if you ever see any of those books where it would have that, it was speaking about that particular person, Gaston Maspero. Now, the interesting thing about him, in addition to being a French Egyptologist, is that he popularized the term sea peoples, which is a term used by many historians. He didn't originate the term. It was originated by his predecessor, but he himself popularized the term. And the term was originally was a French. In French, the term is peuple de la mer. Peuple, of course, literally means peoples. De la mer means of the sea. Mer, M-E-R, which interestingly enough can be phonetically connected with the word Moor, right? And which is interesting, there's quite a debate as who these sea people were. The sea people was purported to be a seafaring confederation that, went to war against the people of ancient Kemet, or what you call Egypt today, and is verified by these ancient texts that are found in Kemet. And while again, there's many debate, there's many theories, much debate as to who they were, and there's definitely confirmation that they were somehow connected with the Hittites. But it's interesting that one of the oral statements of Noble Drew Ali, it states that the Moors were a seafaring people who once ruled the world and will rule again, but this time under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, which is, I'm paraphrasing that oral statement. But it's interesting that that kind of lines up with this notion of the sea people of ancient time, and that the French term is peuple de la Moor. So just something to consider for those of you who are interested in that little history. But getting back into the subject matter, in this particular text, Maspero speaks about the father, mother, and son, which is really father, mother, and child. Of course, he's speaking from a patriarchal perspective, but that ties directly with the statement where it says the triune Allah breathed forth and stood 7 spirits before his face. The Hebrews call these spirits Elohim, right? The spirits of the triune Allah moved on the face of the boundless space, and 7 ethers were, and every ether had its form of life. So again, this dealing with the triune, okay? And we spoke about this many times, about the triune being wisdom, will, and love. Eternal thought is one, in essence it is two. And when these two are joined, a child is born. That child is love. So this kind of ties in exactly to this whole concept. Like I said, the concept of the 3 manifesting in the 7 is found in multiple texts. It confirms itself. There is no coincidence. It's not out of thin air. It's been confirmed over and over in many different writings and many different languages. And again, this is an Egyptologist, a French Egyptologist, who wrote this in the 1800s. So it's nothing strange. The law governs all events. So that's one aspect of it. Also, dealing with the aspect of the gods, the secondary gods, so to speak. It says each of these secondary gods, considered with the one God, which is the triune, may form a new type from which other inferior types emanate in turn and by the same process. Okay. Now, just getting into that earlier in the Bible Mysteries Revealed, it goes into the various examples. First, it goes into the Elohim, And again, as I mentioned, I'll refer to my book, Who is Elohim? And he mentions names in here, such as Michael, Raphael, Gabriel. And knowing that those names originally came by way of the aspect of the book of Enoch, which I'll get into that as well. And that's very important to understand about that term, because even when you deal with Elohim, right, they always refer to that statement in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, where it states, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? And in the verse, in the English translation, the uppercase letter G is used for the word God, right? Now, let's refer to the book of Psalms 82, verse 6, which states, I have said you are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High, Elohim. In this verse, the lowercase letter G is used for the word gods. It's important to note that the same Hebrew word Elohim is used in both verses. And people who use the big G, little g concept would say that the only reason why the word gods is plural is because the lowercase g is used. They would say that the uppercase letter G is used only for the Almighty Creator. There's just one problem with that explanation. There's no such thing as uppercase and lowercase letters in any of the Semitic languages, which includes Hebrew. So that rule does not apply to the Hebrew word Elohim. Okay? Now, to further explain how the word Elohim is a plural word, we'd have to go into the Hebrew language. Suffixes are utilized in the Hebrew language to create plurals of nouns and adjectives, right? So the I am ending, the im ending on the word Elohim, which is spelled Elohim, that I am is a masculine plural suffix. The suffix im consists of the Hebrew letters yad and mim. Other examples of words with I am includes the angelic beings classified as cherubim and seraphim, which is mentioned, I just mentioned cherubim in chapter 10. Cherubim and seraphim are also mentioned in chapter 1 of the Holy Quran of the Moor Science Temple of America, which speaks about the cherubim and seraphim in part, where it says, man is the Lord of all the plane of manifest, of protoplasm, of mineral, of plant, of beast, but he gave up his birthrights just to gratify his lower self. But man will regain his lost estate, his heritage, but he must do it in a conflict that cannot be told in words. Yea, he must suffer trials and tribulations. Forgive me on that. I said that wrong. Yea, he must suffer trials and temptations manifold. But let him know that cherubim and seraphim that rule the stations of the sun and spirit of the mighty Allah, who rule the solar stars, are his protectors and his guide, and they will lead to victory. Okay? Now, also a side note to realize is that the I am is also used in the Bible a lot with beings that are giants, such as the Rephaim, Anakim, and the Emim, okay, which is a term that was used, which was the word that was used for beings that were called by the Moabite people. The Moabite people addressed these people as Emim, right? All of those words have the I am in it. So that the giants would be parallel to your titans in the Greco-Roman mythology, right? Your giant beings. However, when it deals in the Bible about a lot of the tribes, their plural would be ites, like Israelites, Canaanites, Hittites, Moabites, right? But when it would describe these particular giants, there was giants in the earth in those days, they would describe them with the I am, being above, beyond just regular human beings. So that's interesting to note in that aspect. So now, since Elohim is plural, what is the singular form of the word Elohim, right? That would be a question. So the answer to that is that you would have a singular feminine form of the word. The singular feminine form of the word Elohim is the word Eloah, right? And that word, that Hebrew word, is found in the book of Job 41 times. And from this word, you get the Arabic word Allah. So when people hear Allah, they kind of get out of whack. Some people, if they're not, if they have a Christian mindset, or they're not in, or they have this perception of Islam. But that word is really in your Bible anyway, just as the word Eloah, right? Remember, we're dealing with Semitic languages. So that's very important to understand. So without getting too deep into that, and then even a shorter word from there, you would have the root El, E-L, right? Which translates as God or deity, okay? And that word actually originates from the language known as Ugaritic. And Ugaritic is a Northwest Semitic language which forms one of the branches of what they call the Afro-Asiatic language family. And it's known to date back as far as the 15th century BC. Okay, there's a book you can look into, a 1965 book called The Ancient Near East by Cyrus Gordon. Okay, so if you want to be interested in that, that can be connected to what's known as the Ebla tablets, right? And the Ebla tablets are an archive of as many as 1,800 complete clay tablets, right, with 4,700 fragments and different minor chips discovered in the ancient palace of the ancient city in Ebla, Syria, modern day Syria. So all this is in the Middle East, right? The importance of the Ebla tablets is the fact that it provides the first known reference of the ancient Canaanites, okay? And also the rituals which are described in the tablets parallel the ones mentioned in the book of Leviticus, yet it predates Leviticus and all the other books of Moses that they call the Torah, right? So, that's something to think about as well. So from El, you get Eli, right? El Ha-El, or Eli, right? And that translates as my El, or my God. And this is found in the book of Mark, chapter 15, verse 34, which states, "And at the ninth hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani," which is being interpreted, my God, why have thou forsaken me?" And it's interesting to note that this exact statement, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, is also found in the book of Psalms, chapter 22, verse 1. Okay? So, and it gets a little deeper as we go along, but what we'll talk about in the next section is more so about the aspect of the concept of an angel being a human thought, and also the angel being light.